Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture.
Hi friends, how we feeling today?
Feeling like summer still in Kentucky, so
Feels like summer.
I mean that's not a bad thing. Summer. I mean, I'll be complaining about winter, so I don't know what makes me happy. Fall makes me happy.
Ooh, can I ask you guys some questions? Can I ask you guys a question about summer? It's specifically what you're saying, about.
Okay.
So I've recently gotten into some drawing and that kind of stuff, and like trying to represent.
Yeah, you done some couple cool ones
doing some expressive things.
Me.
What for you all? And this is I am put the broad category. It doesn't have to be plants. Doesn't have to be natural. Can be. Are the quintessential imageries of summertime?
Imageries of summertime.
Imagery, like mind's eye when you think of summer kind of things.
Yeah.
The heat coming off of, like, I think of tobacco field. We actually manually hoed out tobacco fields back in the day. 103 degrees, and I would look down those long rows of tobacco that I still had to chop out the weeds of, and just seeing heat signatures coming from the ground looking like Mars. And I'm like, just melting.
Obviously, Ray is going to give an extremely Kentucky folksy answer that is amazing.
You just look out and it looks like a moonscape, just with the heat, just doing that heat signature thing off the ground. Yeah. Yes.
I
just
feel
summer in Kentucky.
Smell it and feel it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everybody else is like, free to answer that one.
I'm from the beach, so it's hard to not think about summer and how everything changed. I'm from Virginia Beach, and so it's the kind of the way the beach fills up in the summertime and takes on life.
I'd say that's pretty interesting.
Brian's a surfer.
Tourism
Brian's
town
a surfer.
Like that.
Did you guys know he's a surfer?
Brian's a surfer?
That's cool.
Say currently is.
I want to be a surfer.
Was at one time, can be again.
Yeah, I surf the internet.
You have skills,
Kentucky's really known for that.
It's like riding a bike, right?
I can surf is probably what we should leave that out right now.
Surfer.
I can't even boogie board.
He has billabong hats. He's a surfer. Okay.
Part of the club.
Embrace it.
Brian and I have been in each other's orbits for too long for me not to know that you.
It's because he contains multitudes. Because Brian's also a chef.
I know. I did know that. Talent.
See, there's also like a discrepancy there where like you can't really be a chef unless you have like a crew.
Gonna have to disagree, chef. Sorry. Behind, chef. Behind.
Is that why you have children so that you can just have a crew just ingrained in the household?
I'm not supposed to contradict you. If you're the chef, I'm not supposed to contradict you in that. Sorry. So yes, chef. Sorry.
Professionally trained cook, I guess.
Yeah. He contains multiple. People think he's just the produce safety guy, which he is a produce safety guy, but he's got a lot. There's a lot of there. Brian is the reason that I got into baking bread and pizza. He has been a co-fermenter of different products across time and interest in that kind of stuff. So yeah, I as a person with lots of other interests, respect game. And he's taught me a lot across time.
I do remember having class with Brian as a young child who knew nothing of the world, and remember hearing in those intro classes the first day, tell me about yourself, the icebreakers, and Brian saying he was a chef and then he was studying sustainable agriculture. And I swear, I'm not making this up. I legitimately thought that was like the coolest thing I'd ever heard. I was like, he knows how to make the things. Now he's gonna know how to grow the things. And to this day,
now he knows how to do it all safely.
And now he knows how to do it.
Yeah. Food safety is big in both of those realms.
I was going to say kind of sort of important. Yeah.
I almost said now he knows how to not make people sick, but that's probably something you knew as a chef as well. So.
Let's hope.
I was thinking along the same lines, Alexis, and I was like,
don't say that, Alexis. Don't say that.
Yeah.
Maybe rephrase that. Maybe.
Well, that brings us to the reason why we're here. Anybody has been watching, and why we're here specifically with Brian.
Tone change there.
So anybody who's been watching the news has maybe heard about some things with fruits and vegetables and the ways that it may or may not make you sick. Some of them that are out there floating around in the marketplace. There's a lot of As you might imagine, Facebook is just rife with people just riffing about it from all different angles and all different. It's become weirdly political
very
in
good
a way.
Information.
Yeah, a lot of citations needed.
Impressive how many hidden Cyclospora experts there were.
I know. Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that?
Yeah.
I thought it was only on Wikipedia, but oh no, not at all. Absolutely not at all.
Lots of talk around the water coolers at extension offices about
Bryan. What's
going on?
What's your take on this?
I think that, for lack of a better reason as to why this one seems to have taken on legs compared to some of the other recalls and some of the other outbreaks is probably the term explosive diarrhea.
Yes, that tends to be an attention grabber.
Yeah, and the fact that it's become pretty obvious that it's in the supply chain of Taco Bell, which has always had this.
That's fun to talk about that with them anyway. So yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just grabbed a lot of people's attention. I think that it's likely that the numbers as well are way, way higher than what's reported in Michigan, which has much higher numbers than what's been reported by the CDC. That's a big thing with food safety outbreaks or human pathogen outbreaks through food is that it's grossly underreported. If you don't go to the hospital, then it's very unlikely that it's going to get recorded. So yeah, and it's just one of those that seems to, I think, just kind of been showing its head more often recently. We've seen Cyclospora at this time of year. So technically you might have heard this, because I know there's been a lot of information around there and everybody definitely knows more about it than they used to. But there is a season for it. So it's essentially like May through August. It likes warm weather.
So when I asked earlier about the imageries of summer, you should have said Cyclospora.
That would have been a good one.
It may become
explosions, not just fireworks.
4th of July.
Yeah. So it's got some unique properties too, or just some unique biology compared to other human pathogens. We're usually looking at like viruses and bacteria. E. coli, salmonella, listeria, things like that. But this one's a microscopic parasite. And and it has some serious staying power. It's got a oocyst kind of shell that protects it from desiccation, that protects it from, one of the things I told you guys earlier that's very unique about it is the sanitizers that we use in wash water do not affect it at all. So chlorine doesn't affect it. Peracetic acid does not affect it.
So just for those who aren't familiar with like maybe how a packing shed works or how the processing might work, you might have a situation where you have a big basin full of water and you can add a sanitizer to it, and then people might dunk stuff in that in order to help sanitize. You're not going to kill if it's really, really dirty. But it's an extra step to help to sanitize that. Or you might have a wash line that's pushing water through and washing peppers or apples or whatever. And in that process, it will have a sanitizer in it. Is that what you're talking about, Bryan? And you're saying that sanitizer doesn't kill it.
And that sanitizer really acts kind of in the same way that chlorine acts in a pool. It's not there to clean you, but it is there to prevent anything that comes off of you that's a human pathogen to getting onto somebody else. So if you've got one head of lettuce or 10 heads of lettuce that are infected, it doesn't infect hundreds that go through there. But in this case, it does not reduce the amount of pathogen in the water or prevent it. And in fact, what it does is spread it all over everything.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
So if you're washing lettuce and one of it has Cyclospora on it, the sanitizer won't kill it in the water. And now your water is an inoculation bath.
Yeah, essentially. And, there's a couple of other unique things about it are that it takes very little to be infected. So it could be a situation where small amounts can infect large amounts, and then small amounts on produce can affect large amounts of people. And it is also uniquely human host only. So
that's interesting.
If you've got Cyclospora, then you're dealing somewhere along the line with human feces. So could be
as compared to like E. coli or something like that can come from a cow or from a pig or whatever.
Exactly. Even like Giardia and Cryptosporidium, which are two of the other microscopic parasites that can be in water, untreated water. This one specifically comes from humans and is hosted by humans only. So that does give you, when they're doing these investigations and traceback, it does give you an idea that human sewage is involved here somewhere.
Can you give us an example about like these investigations? I know there's some classic ones that we use when we do produce best practices training for farmers and growers of like, how can these things go from one farm, so many miles away and then get across the country and infect things? Like how, I know we don't necessarily know the main source of this one yet, but how can this be traveling, across, or how do things, get moved around?
Yeah. So I would say take this as a hypothetical example because they don't completely know. They have a pretty good idea of where it came from and how this happened. So let's say a farm, these farms that grow hundreds of acres of lettuce usually use furrow irrigation, which means they're filling the furrows in between the raised beds with water. They generally are keeping it below that soil line where the lettuce is growing. Iceberg lettuce is growing pretty much directly on the ground. And so that's how they are irrigating. That water is surface water, which is coming, untreated water, surface water, definitely has issues with runoff. And what we do when we test, unfortunately right now, what we do when we test ag irrigation water is we test for generic E. coli, and that acts as an indicator to how much fecal contamination there is in water, but excuse me, it's specific to bacteria. So it doesn't necessarily, you could test, relatively clean for E. coli, but have no idea
parasites,
what the parasites are in there. And to be fair, it is much more likely that there would be like Giardia or Cryptosporidium in there.
And that's because the water tests can be expensive. You're testing a lot in a lot of these systems. And so it's sort of it becomes an industry standard to test for this as a proxy for all the other things. In the same way that having a fever is an indication there's something wrong with you. I mean, there's just
exactly.
So to be fair to, people are, why don't they test everything? Well, it's because they're testing and getting a lot of negative tests all the time. And that costs money and time and everything else.
And I do think from that perspective, as a indicator of, human pathogen, E. coli is great for that. And it does work for that. And that is very scientifically valid. I think the other end of it is if farms go on to treat that water for irrigation purposes, then they treat it usually with either chlorine or parasitic acid. And that specifically just kills the E. coli. So you get that E. coli number down, tests look good to go. However, this, we're still with furrow irrigation. They're still using a best practice where the water is not supposed to get on the edible portion of the crop. And so somehow there was a breakdown of that in this process. And so one farm, a portion of, one lot of lettuce gets picked and then shipped to a processing facility. And you'll notice a lot of these recalls with romaine and E. coli that are pretty common are almost always cut lettuce.
And again, this is a hypothetical example that sort of proves a point of how this might happen.
It goes to this production facility. It gets shredded. Then it goes into their water, gets that triple wash you see on the bags. And that water, for sure, is treated with a sanitizer and is clean water. And also likely has, filtration on the front end, but the problem is that lettuce has it on it. So when it goes in that water and that sanitizer can't affect it, it is now being spread amongst all of that shredded lettuce. It's getting packaged up, and then it's being sent, across the country to large food service vendors. I mean, we know Taco Bell is likely the source where people bought it and ate it. So yeah, the like Brett, like you said, people might say, oh, why aren't we testing for it now? We know it's happening more often. There's a season for it in the summer. Why don't we test then at least for it? Well, so, I wasn't an expert on testing for, Cyclospora before this outbreak, but having looked into it and asked some questions about that, you've got to take a sample of like 10 liters of water to deliver. They have to run it through filters, and they have to actually use PCR to identify it. And that's why that test that came back false positive because it's a very difficult test to then prove
to have super conclusive results.
Right. Yeah. I did see, this is on the cutting edge of things. I saw that a professor at Purdue, a materials scientist, is trying to develop a test that's very similar to the COVID test. So it'd be a rapid test.
Cool.
That would identify Cyclospora. So that'd be cool if we could get one of those. But it's when you run into these large outbreaks, it very often involves a processing facility, and it's not necessarily that processing facility again that is causing the outbreak, but it is the fact that all of it gets commingled and all of it goes through that water, and all of it ends up with a little bit of Cyclospora, and that's all it takes. And then to add to the difficulty with Cyclospora is that it's got an incubation period of like 7+ days. So
wow,
really hard to track that.
What does that mean?
What did you eat? I mean, could you guys list what you ate a week ago?
Yeah,
2 weeks ago.
Oh no,
that's not. Nope.
Yeah.
When you say incubate, what does that mean?
So if you consume the product with Cyclospora in it, then it'll take at least 7 days until you start to exhibit symptoms.
So it's not like I ate it yesterday and I feel bad today, or I ate it this morning and I feel bad this afternoon. It's
no wonder it's so underreported, because you would never think it's food related, because in most people's minds, my mind, if it's food related, it's within 24 hours.
Yeah, you think about what you ate last night or the day of, when it's really not the culprit, is it?
Yeah, and believe it or not, some of the really bad ones, Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria. Salmonella and E. coli have a shorter incubation period than that, but longer than you would think. So that is another reason why those are hard to trace back. But Listeria can be a month. So that one is incredibly difficult to track. But yeah, that's something that's added to the time it's taken to kind of figure out where it's come from.
Seems like with this. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, thinking through in my mind, checking off like audit boxes in my brain, like pre and post processes. It seems like this is one of those bad actors, one of those bad guys. It being, microscopic parasite, that really you would focus on your the upfront, kind of keeping it out of the food stream to begin with. Is that where it falls in the auditing process and thinking about these things? Because once it gets in there, it's in there, it sounds like.
Yes, exactly. If you are, if you've adopted best practices to, as far as irrigation water is concerned, you are either using, the majority of our farms, whether it's, the greatest thing for them or not, are using municipal water to irrigate crops that are usually eaten raw. And they are using drip irrigation, which is another best practice. So both where the water comes from and the delivery method are kind of the two main ways that they're kind of categorized by risk. So low risk is municipal water. That medium risk is well water. Which can become contaminated, but much less likely than surface water, which is almost certainly contaminated to a point. Which is why we do, if you're using surface water for irrigation.
What's surface water?
So surface water is any water that's exposed to the air. So it would be ponds, it would be creeks, streams, rivers. Also, if you use a rain barrel, That's considered surface water because that's catching water off of a roof that's unprotected. So that's all considered surface water. So what we try to work with growers to do, that if you're going to use the high risk source of the water, you use the lowest risk delivery of water. And so if you're using surface water and you're using drip irrigation, even drip irrigation under plastic, even better. I know that's not an option for everybody, but then you're certainly reducing the risk.
Yeah, it seems like, generally speaking, water is a big part of what you're talking. And you were saying, I think you were saying earlier, you talked something about a pre or post or something like that. Can you talk, like, what does that mean?
Pre-harvest.
Correct whatever I said.
Yeah, no. Pre-harvest water is anything before harvest. It's primarily irrigation, but it also is anything that's being sprayed, which is why maybe you read a little bit about raspberries being a carrier of Cyclospora, and you think, well, those don't get washed, and those likely don't get overhead irrigation because of mold issues and stuff like that. Well, they get sprayed a lot, and they have those little hairs on them, those little trichomes that grab onto everything, and so that's why. That's a risk. So yeah, sprays are one, and there are even some large operations that use water during harvest, particularly ice for like sweet corn harvest, broccoli harvest, things like that. And then post-harvest water is really anything after the product's harvested. You're usually looking at a couple different types. There's single pass water, which is like basically an overhead spray on root vegetables. And then you mentioned earlier, like a basin, dunk water, that is, usually to take field heat out, also to clean up greens and stuff. That's the one where you are going to want to use a sanitizer to protect any kind of cross contamination. And then there are some operations that have reused water, where it is a system that's spraying water on top and then it's getting recycled and reused. And usually you're also the best practice, and likely they're large enough that they're actually required by law to have a sanitizer in that water that's being reused. That's really rare, but the two, overhead and dunk washing, are pretty common.
Yeah, I think one of the, again, people might be thinking in their minds, well, why don't you just hook it up to municipal water and use that for everything, since it's treated and it's safe and everything? And it keeps coming back to the margins in this business. The amount of money that you can make growing produce is already so thin that if you start to add in having to buy water as opposed to use water that's there, it gets really tricky. And like, it's the scale thing too. People are imagining maybe a small field or something, but when you're talking about the volume that some of these operations are doing, they literally almost don't have an economic choice but to use some of those types of runoff water. And you can manage it, but the unfortunate thing about food safety is, like, you can be right 99.9% more of the time, and then when you're wrong, it can be bad. And like Jess, you were saying about, like, how does it end up going from this one farm to all these other places? It's the R word in agriculture of risk. That, like, as you scale an operation, especially a distribution operation, you scale the, like, potential impact of the risk. And I think something that's been kind of interesting to see, I've seen it in the news. I've seen the news agencies going out and interviewing some farms that we're big fans of here locally. We have a network of price reporters and others that we work with that we've been talking to, that we've seen this. I wish that it didn't require a global pandemic or a bunch of people getting sick from eating lettuce from somewhere else, but this, like, surge in interest in sourcing products locally because they perceive the supply chain as being risky in one way or another, or maybe it's, in the COVID, it was a different thing too. But I think that I'm swinging back around to Bryan. You, along with others, have done more than just about anybody to help enhance the food safety of Kentucky food supplies, produce supplies. And so I would be curious to hear maybe the elevator pitch of, like, how, and for those who don't know you, how and why you've done that, or not why you've done that.
But like, I like food. Safe food.
I don't want to die.
Yes.
But also, like, what types of safeguards have you helped farmers put in place, to try to avoid this altogether?
Sure. So what my primary function is at the Food Connection at UK is to help produce farmers access wholesale markets, and that primarily, help them with all the certifications that they need in order to access wholesale markets, and that primarily involves a third-party food safety audit, which is known as a GAP audit. And so what we do is we go out on farm and we help farms assess their risks. We go through and find their unique risks, and then we find ways for them to reduce those risks. There's no eliminating risk. Like, there's always going to be risk when you're eating produce raw. And that is the unique thing about produce that makes it risky. There are other things that make it risky, but the fact that lettuce, you're going to eat lettuce and there's never going to be a kill step, you're going to be eating it raw, is a risk in and of itself that you're not going to eliminate. So what we help farms do, again, is assess those risks, and then depending on how they operate, for the most part, we help them reduce those risks within how they already operate. There are some situations where we advise them to do, to change this, to change that. Mostly it's retrofitting things that they already do. And I will say that a lot of our farms that we work with are using municipal water to grow if they are growing. And they are doing that, and it's simply an easier step for them. But that's not the case with everybody. But the ones, the ones that are using water that, we have quite a few farms that use well water, which is generally pretty safe. They're testing that once a year. They're following the guidelines that are set forth by federal government, and they, are testing it to make sure that that's not contaminated. But again, like we talked about, the method of delivery is really important as well.
Just to make sure people understand, when you're saying they're using municipal water, you're saying that the water that they're using, a municipal, like a city or whatever, has treated that, tested it. You could literally go and drink the water that they're irrigating with.
Yes, as long as
opposed to a well, or in a well you can drink, but there's things, but like a pond. I wouldn't want to necessarily go and grab a glass of pond water and just drink it straight up.
No, thank you.
Please don't.
Not even the cistern,
but only because you told me not to, Brian.
Quit showing off, Brett. Quit showing
off. So yeah, they are using water. They're essentially using tap water that is potable water. And the requirement for post-harvest water is that it must be potable, that you could drink it, that there is zero E. coli in it. And so the things that a municipality or a water treatment facility use to prevent parasites from being in the water are things like membrane filtration. These are big enough that they can filter them out. And also UV filtration, so they can use UV light in line to also degrade the cell structure of any of these parasites, or their shell, or their little protective oocyst. So that's what's happening that's not happening on the farm. And you certainly, we've gotten in discussions before with different water projects where people, were interested in using surface water for different things, and we always kind of come to the conclusion that, unless you want to put a complete water treatment facility on your farm, then this is a better practice than using surface water. So, we universally, I think, with the farms we work with, they're using municipal water in post-harvest situations, and they're being, they're taking an extra step to use sanitizers in water, because that's a requirement in a GAP audit. If you are using water that you're going to dunk in, then you have to use the appropriate sanitizer. And we go as far as to that sanitizer has to be labeled by the EPA for that use specifically. And you have to use the right amount, and you have to use a little dip strip to make sure that that's the right amount. So
log it and all that stuff. You're not just dumping chlorine and being like, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Because that's not great either.
It seems like smaller producers, they'll try these sometimes novel solutions is a good way to put it, maybe like the washing machine and lettuce and all these different methods that we see. I guess not everybody's required to have an audit, but do you find that in instances like this, is there like a renewed interest to take all reasonable efforts? Does that kind of spike that interest in those that may not even be required to have a third party? Or I've never really thought about it, I guess.
At this point, I would say the reason that we're not seeing like a spike in that is because the Department of Ag and the FDA have made a huge kind of push over the last, I'd say, I guess even like a decade now, to promote education around the Food Safety Modernization Act.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these farms the majority of farms in Kentucky, produce farms in Kentucky, I believe, have had the training.
Yeah.
It's actually a requirement.
The base FSMA,
a lot of farmers markets are requiring it.
Most markets that I've worked with, they just require that as a baseline now. They go that extra step.
No, Bryan, I've heard you clarify this a million times, but can you just briefly disambiguate for me the gap audit from the FSMA?
Yes. Yeah, we live in like an acronym soup. Food safety
slurry.
Yeah. And so FSMA is a federal regulation. It is the Food Safety Modernization Act, and the one that affects produce is called the Produce Safety Rule. And it is the Kentucky Department of Agriculture administers that for the state, and they do it on behalf of the FDA. And so if you meet certain requirements, if you are large enough, if you primarily sell wholesale, then you actually fall completely under the rule, and you will occasionally get an inspection from KDA. Typically, if you're large enough to do that, you're also going to have a gap audit. But what a gap audit is a voluntary thing. It is only something that you need to get if you are planning to sell to someone that requires it. So it's very similar, like the requirements and the topics are very similar to the produce safety rule. In fact, they've even been aligned to kind of fall, to essentially be exactly the same. You just have to do more. You have to keep records. You have to write a food safety plan. You've got to pay for an audit, and you have to do that annually, actually. So food safety really once you start to sell into a wholesale market, food safety becomes pretty serious on the farm.
And so that's like you're selling to a distributor, you're selling to some, restaurants typically don't require it necessarily.
No, actually, no.
Some of them do though. So it's and basically, if you want to grow and get larger, the company that's buying from you wants some sort of assurance that you're doing something, you're doing the right things to try to adhere to this. And there's different scales and levels of those. And I think the FSMA stuff is, it's more broad, like it covers more people, more things, and it's a federal legal, legislation rather than the other way around. And
it's technically, if you grow produce that's normally eaten raw, then it affects you in some way, shape, or form. You may be exempt from it because you grow too little of it, but that doesn't mean that you're completely out of the loop. You've got to take the training, and you've got to prove that with records that you're exempt from it. So, it really was designed for that produce that we eat raw.
And honestly, so part of it is the idea of the record keeping, and part of it is, I think, just thinking through practical steps of how something could get contaminated, or these reducing the risk and all that kind of stuff. And then part of it, there are some traceability pieces.
I was going to ask, the traceability is what I was thinking of.
Because I think that frankly, even though considering the incubation period, and even though maybe some people don't think it's the idea that we were able to figure out where it came from relatively quickly, actually, or at least trace back to point of service that, talk about or whatever. Yeah. Anytime that this comes out, I'm always like, man, that is a informational and logistical marvel that there was that much. So what's that like? Is that part of the traceability thing? And part of food?
Every step along the value chain, the food chain, the supply chain, every step along the supply chain, you have to be able to trace your product one step back and one step forward. And so for a farmer, because you're the originator of that product, that means you have to be able to say this product came from my farm. Usually we get more detailed than that. So normally it's field level based, also based on what day it's harvested. Sometimes with larger farms, it even gets down to who was harvesting and working that day. So that stuff all goes on a label that goes on either a box or a pallet. Usually it's at the box level because multiple boxes are obviously going to be taken off of a pallet, so that somebody one step forward could do a recall with you if you actually needed it. And so one step forward is obviously your records of who you sell to. And in a gap audit, you actually annually have to do what's called a mock recall, where you call somebody that you've sold product to and you ask about a specific lot, and you say how much of that product you have left, and then they can tell you how much of that product they have left, even if it's zero. That then you have conducted a traceability exercise that shows that you could reach out and grab that product back if you needed to.
But vegetable farming is fun, folks.
That's crazy. That's just because some of the stuff is using like sensor technologies.
Oh, sure.
And it's not like it's all clipboards. I'm
barcodes,
observing like even just individual workers might have like a particular card, and as they bring up their thing to harvest, it's scanned that like this came from this spot and this. Yeah. So I mean, like the technology it scales pretty quick and becomes really intensive informatics, really, about like the way that these farms operate, and they're able to trace that stuff. And again, places that are doing that, a lot of times they are the ones that have this really amplified risk of distribution and centralization and processing and all that kind of stuff. Is there like, I think I'd love for you to toot your own horn about some of the successes of the program and of your particular outreach, like the number of farms that have kind of showed interest, and anything like that would be good to hear. Cause I think for me, I feel like Kentucky we've gotten a lot of support on making food a little bit safer here. And just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
So our program, the Cultivate Kentucky program, has been around for 10 years now, actually. And over that time, we've had over 220 farms get audited. Wow. Now that's individual audits because it's an annual thing. So I would say of the farms that we've worked with, we're probably around 70 farms at this point. And then I think 6 packing and storage facilities. So we also help. If you're just packing and not processing, then we can also help with that part of an audit. And one of the big things for us is we have 100% success rate in passing the audit. That also has to do with the fact that doesn't mean that we make it so easy that you're just going to cruise on by. That means that if you're not ready, then we're going to say, hey, you're not ready. Cancel your audit. You're not taking this seriously enough. But there are also other food safety entities in Kentucky that have been really, a produce safety team was built out at KDA to support FSMA. The Food Systems Innovation Center has an extension specialist, Paul Priesh, who is kind of administers the FSMA training program for the state, and they the number escapes me right now, but it's in the thousands of farms that he's led trainings on. So there's really good produce food safety infrastructure in Kentucky, and it's even getting better. We're going to have in-state auditors at the Department of Agriculture. They've signed a cooperative agreement with the USDA, and I'm allowed to say that now. The commissioner announced it at the
it's out.
It's out, which was that's another big thing. It's
a big deal because previously you had to pay for somebody to fly in to come from somewhere far away in order to do this audit, because we just didn't have as broad a base of need demonstrated in Kentucky to have them, and a lot of other things involved. But so that's really exciting. And I would say I remember I'm flashing back to a meeting maybe 6 months ago that you were sort of leading here's the information, here's what we have. And then there was people from KDA, people from UK, from KCARD, from Kentucky Horticulture Council, all kind of gathered together. Like, this is a problem. We need to fix this. And that, it's really cool to see that come to fruition, and big props to KDA for stepping up and facilitating that.
Almost immediately. They took the ball and ran with it. It was one of those meetings where you kind of call in 10 years worth of favors and say, hey, can you guys help us? Because
we get this together.
We've got a problem. It will. And also would like to mention that the Kentucky Horticulture Council has a cost share for gap audits. They pay 75% of the cost of the audit, up to currently it's $1,250. If we can, having an in-state auditor should push the audit down far enough that's going to continue to be really useful. I mean, it currently is still really useful for growers. It's a lot of money, and the issue here is that it's an annual thing, so that kind of compounds on itself. If we were looking at $3,000 audits every year, then versus where we were at $1,000, you're looking at $2,000 extra every single year. That compounds really quick and really pushes out small farmers that have found a way to make wholesale for, say, one or two products work for them.
So this will be my last question, and sorry I've dominated, but I'm just have a lot of interest in this, and call it a passion. Maybe I just have a passion for not having explosive diarrhea. So as you see this thing unfolding, you're seeing it from a different perspective, from like a typical consumer, or from a farmer. I mean, like, there's a lot of different. Like, are you particularly like alarmed by it? Are you surprised? Is this the system working as it is supposed to? Is this how are you interpreting this?
Definitely not surprised. I mean, it's just, again, like we were talking about, you can reduce risk, but it's always going to be there. And there's always potential for some sort of new contamination route. These farms have serious food safety culture and serious, food safety plans and records. So not surprising. And I will say that every time one of these happens, the immediate demand to kind of figure out where it came from and know exactly where it came from. Why don't we know where it came from? It takes a while. And the fact that they were able to do it in the speed that they did it in, I think it is the system working the way it should. So yes, there's a lot of people that got sick, but that is, like you said, the scale of the risk, the size of the operation. Food service entities like Taco Bell are going to use quite a bit of lettuce, and farms and processing facilities, different times of year, different places are processing and sending product, and you're looking at a scale that you really probably can't comprehend unless you would go and stand in one of those farms and horizon.
As far as the eye can see, it's lettuce. As far as the eye can
see is nothing but lettuce. So and you're growing this outdoors, you're eating it raw. So it's not surprising, and it's a risk you take with produce. And I know we talked earlier about local produce, and when you are buying locally, there are so many great things along with that. But from a food safety perspective, you're dealing with a shorter supply chain. You're dealing with smaller risk in terms of size. You are also generally not going to get locally. You're not going to get pre-cut lettuce where things are mingled, and that's so. And we talked earlier a little bit about how farmers markets have been selling out, and I think pre-COVID, maybe this is just me, my imagination, but pre-COVID that wouldn't have been the case. Maybe all produce bad, don't eat lettuce, no lettuce, all produce bad kind of situation. But I think that people realized, and there's enough people out there supporting local farms, and social media has driven the kind of, hey, this is a big supply chain kind of thing. I'm not saying there's no risk. Any produce you eat raw, there's risk, but you are getting one product from one farm. If you're buying a head of lettuce, that is one head of lettuce. That is not 3,000 heads of lettuce that went through the same wash line in 30 minutes. So
I've learned it's like gas station food. When you have a problem, it's a big problem. There's no small problems on a big operation.
Yeah.
There's no problems or big problems on that scale and scope that Brett alluded to. But I didn't realize I was on the forefront of food safety. Yeah, I mean, just use really hot bacon grease. You take that, you pour it over your lettuce. See, I'm all about food safety, people. Yeah. Killed lettuce, or I guess
spinach.
Is spinach really? No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Killed lettuce.
Does Cyclospora survive hot bacon grease? Is really the research?
It's the study we all need in our lives, right?
It dies with heat too.
Okay.
That's good.
Hey, listen, safety first, people. Hot bacon grease.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I did see that they were saying if you have raspberries or something, to can it and to make like jam or something like that. And I was like, let me just add sugar. But the heat. Yeah. I was like, this is an interesting spin.
This has been really great information, and to kind of like twist it for like more of a homeowner like instance. We in our area have recently had a lot of flooding and a lot of calls. Can I still use this produce? It was underwater for 24 hours, right? And so this is a great way of being like, hey, this like really hits it home of like why you don't want to use that. Not just like they're concerned about, oh, my plants aren't going to be doing good, but all the other things that can come in with that flooding. And it kind of all ties back to even in your own backyard, food safety that can occur. And, it works its way from the backyard garden all the way up to the big, as far as the eye can see, fields of lettuce. So great information.
Underwater, no eat.
Yeah.
Bad. There you go.
Equal bad.
Yeah, I think people would be not pleased by how much of the water that's in those natural creeks and things around your house has fecal material in it.
Yes.
I don't think they'd be pleased to learn that.
And various other chemicals and substances.
All kinds of other fun stuff.
So you're welcome, listeners. The next time you're near a beautiful body of water, just remember, there's poop in there.
Maybe you don't want to dive down in there and take a big gulp.
Well, thank you, Bryan, for joining us.
Great conversation.
For all the stuff that you've done, over the years to support this Kentucky industry to be safer and people to be able to eat and trust food that they're getting from it. You mentioned the Food Connection. We'll make sure to link to that and the Cultivate Kentucky partnership and all the fun things. But if you all enjoyed this episode, be sure to give us a like or rate us 5 stars if you haven't done it already. What are you waiting for? And you can reach out to us on hortculturepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram at hortculturepodcast if you'd like to leave us some comments about what you want to see next, or follow us there, send us a message, whatever tickles your fancy. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you down the road.